Welcome to Tilly's Trans Tuesdays. The commodification of trans rights under capitalism has always been complicated and often awful, but things recently took a nosedive by removing that commodification entirely. Let's talk rainbow capitalism too, from bad to worse. Hi, I'm Tilly Bridges, your host, and I'm joined by my writing partner, my best friend, my wife, our token cis representation, the lady who'd never do a capitalism to my rainbow, Susan Bridges.
Hello.
Our returning guest is Mia V. Moss, a science fiction and fantasy author from the East San Francisco Bay Area. They are the author of the cli-fi noir novella My Ties for the Lost and the creator of The Breakfast Cereal, a food blog written from the perspective of a human settling on a new planet far from Earth. Their debut novel, the epic fantasy The Heresy of Thieves, comes out October 6th from Dark Matter Inc. Welcome back, Mia.
Thank you so much for having me back. Hello.
Okay, so I was looking up information about your book to prep for your previous episode, and I found a little bio for you that said you love being a DM in tabletop games.
Gasp. Oh, yes,
Me
absolutely.
too.
Yay! Forever DM team.
Yeah. What is it that you love about it so much?
I get really into building out the world a little more for my players and making maps. And there's a program called Incarnate.
Yeah.
And making maps in Incarnate is like so soothing for me. And then the other half of that is I love that my players they never make it boring. No matter how much I prep for a session, there is always some random curveball that will be thrown my way where
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I I really love that aspect of it where it's like collaborative in a very chaotic way.
Yes, it is. And it's like no matter how much I plan or how many things I'm like, okay, they might do this or they might do that or they might do this other thing, they'll still do something I never ever thought of and have zero plans for.
Well, to be fair, both of your games are populated heavily by professional writers. So I think it's even worse.
It is because they all have giant imaginations and they're like, well, I know what I would do here. And it's never what
Yep.
I thought. So, yeah. Okay, what has been the most surprising thing about your transition?
The most surprising thing about my transition is the way that I've kind of, I mean, it surprised me a little bit as I was going through. I said on the last episode that it was like very stealth for
Yeah.
me going through it, but it was also stealth for me and just kind of like getting to know myself a little more and getting to know where I was putting up guardrails that I hadn't realized I was putting up. And so that was very surprising. And then also just being welcomed into a broader community, a very rich and amazing and incredible community with some of the most brilliant and beautiful people I've ever met. So that's been a wonderful surprise.
Yeah. I love both of those because I also feel like when you transition, when you realize that you are not who society has told you your whole life you have been, you uncover so many things about yourself that you never ever knew along the way. And it's just this process of getting to know who you actually are. And there's
Yes.
so many beautiful things in there when you find out, oh, this is how I am and this is why I'm like that. And kind of love that about myself. And I feel like I also had the same thing with the community. Like, you hear of the trans community and the queer community, but you don't really know until you get into it what being seen by those people is like, especially when they share your same experiences. You finally discover I'm not alone in this. This person knows exactly what I'm going through and exactly what this is like. And it makes you feel so connected to other people after so long feeling isolated, and it's really magical.
100%. Yeah. I think I had a literal kind of like Alice in Wonderland moment where I had gone out to meet up with some friends just for dinner. And then they were like, oh, now we're going to a club because it's tea for tea night. And I was like, okay, what's that? And we went and like there was just like massive amounts of people at this nightclub. And I knew someone who was DJing there. And it was just so crowded with like just all like I just made a million new friends. I felt like in the space of a few hours that night, and it was just a wonderful thing to be thrown into and kind of ambushed with in a good way.
Yeah, I love that. That's really beautiful. I also like earlier this year, we had a show that was part of a trans theater festival, and just like going to the events for this and all the other trans people you would meet, and you would just, they're just all so varied and beautiful, and you would be like instant, easy friends with so many of them because we're all going through the same things and have the same experiences and struggles. And it was just, it's a really beautiful thing.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So I just want to mention that, like, after that, we went to a play where a trans person was starring in, and it was discount night, and we ran into like literally every other trans person. We
It was really funny. Yeah, we all just showed up and we didn't
none of us
plan
had
this.
money.
Right. We don't have money. So all of the trans people that we knew went to this to see this other trans person in a play on the discount night because that's all we could
Discount.
afford. We were like, hey, it was wild. We all just kept showing up. We're like, you're here too? Imagine. Yeah.
I love that.
If you had one piece of advice for someone who is just starting their transition or to figure themselves out, or if there's something you wish you knew going in, what would that be?
I think so. My one piece of advice I think would be to like don't be scared of taking your time
Yeah.
and don't feel pressured to like rush in like oh okay this is the proper way to do it like yeah like everyone else's experience is different too and I think even the people that kind of look like they have their stuff together and really seem like oh they just magically knew how to be fully present as themselves. I think it's more often than not absolutely not the case even if they're really good at kind of seeming that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really important because so many people will tell you there's only one way to transition, or you have to be exactly this way once you do transition. And I think a lot of people also have spent so long feeling like
Yeah.
we weren't ourselves that when we finally realize and we start that journey, you want to just jump to the end because you want, like, I want to get rid of this bad feeling and I want those good feelings, but it's sadly cannot be rushed. You do really have to take your time and figure yourself out and what you really want as you go.
Yes. Yeah, you absolutely do. And it can be a lot of simple things too. I remember I had a therapy session. I have an amazing therapist. And I was talking about how I didn't really know what my own personal style was because I had
Yeah.
felt so long. Yeah, like that I was just like kind of just dressing to appear as something or another. And I didn't really know, you hear so much about people say like wear what expresses you. And then I was just thinking like I have no idea what expresses me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they had me do an exercise where I just kind of, like I think I made a Pinterest board for it and I just sort of pretended I had infinite money and really played around with that privately a lot with exploring like what clothes really spoke to me. Even if I had no intention of, buying a $10,000 jacket or whatever crazy thing I'd found. It was just like yeah, this kind of aesthetic is what's pulling me. I like a lot of velvet, I guess, but like so that was helpful.
That's great. Did you find like some of those things that you felt were your aesthetic that once you started like trying some of those things on, did you find out that they really weren't for you or that you liked them even more than you thought? Because I had that where pre-transition or when I was getting close to coming out, I was looking at women's clothes and I had this giant list of bookmarks for like stuff that I really liked and that I thought I would totally wear. And then early in transition, I got some of it and put it on. I'm like, no, this is surprisingly not it. I don't feel right. This isn't me. So I was wondering if you went
Yeah.
through any of that.
Yes, absolutely. There were some things I thought I was really going to love wearing, and that I just put them on and it didn't feel right at all.
Yeah. Yeah, the only way to find that out is to experiment, I think. So you have to give yourself that
Yeah.
time to and be open to however you feel with all the things that you're trying. What?
Yes, you
You're
absolutely
smirking at
have
me.
to.
Why are you smirking at me?
I gave you all your bows back.
You've said that like 10 times on this show.
I know,
Yeah.
but it's funny every time.
Okay. Pre-transition, I was always trying to get Susan to get bows because I loved bows and I thought I loved seeing her in bows.
And you bought me so many bows.
But no, it was just me.
I just dumped a pile of bows on the bed and I'm like, here you go.
And I was so happy that you had saved them for me all those years.
I love that you saved them. It's great.
All right, before we move on, do you want to remind folks one more time where they can find you online after listening?
Yes, you can find me at Magic Robot Carnival all together.com as my website. You can also sign up for my newsletter there. And then I'm also on Blue Sky at magicrobotcarnival.com.
Perfect. All right, we cannot start this discussion without talking about rainbow capitalism first. So please listen to episode 23 of this show for more on that. But this is part 2, so hopefully you've already figured out that you should listen to part 1 first because you are very smart and have excellent taste in the trans podcast that you choose to listen to. The basic gist of it is that companies often only offer Pride merchandise in June while at the same time supporting politicians and policies that try to strip trans and queer people of our rights. It is a naked ploy for our money and in no way actually supports us. Except trans people are part of the people who do business with these companies, so they should have merchandise targeted toward us. And it's really nice to have things with the trans pride flag on it because I am so proud to be trans and I love my community. The disconnect is in the double dealing that they do in not actually supporting trans rights. It's very much a case of performative allyship, as discussed in episode 158, and performative allyship to false allyship, as discussed way back in episode 8. They may want to think of themselves as a good company that supports trans people. Well, some of them might, but I also suspect many know exactly what they're doing. Or they want to be seen as supporting trans people. But hey, if the Republicans are going to give their mega corporation more tax breaks, too bad. Saving some money and profit line always goes up is more important than your inalienable human rights. And so it's complicated because we do want to be treated as valued customers, but it's got to be honest with real world support. For a case of handling trans merchandising the right way, listen to episode 142 on radical trans acceptance for how, yes, my roller derby league offers trans merch, but they also back it up with action and year round support of trans rights. It's important to note that roller derby leagues are not corporations. Mine is actually a nonprofit made up entirely of volunteers, many of whom are trans and non binary themselves. What a difference that makes. Before we go further, Mia, I wanted to ask what your sort of baseline feelings and experience around rainbow capitalism are.
I think it's a lot of like front dealing, like you mentioned, where they're not
Yeah.
really interested in supporting us. They just want our money, which is nice. I remember, the early days of rainbow capitalism. I think the first thing I could remember is like Absolute, the vodka company, did like rainbow bottles or something like that a long time ago, and it felt good to be seen and like, yeah, wow, we're mainstream enough to be worth advertising to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but definitely I think it always kind of, as soon as July 1st came around, then it was just like off the shelves, and so that was always kind of transparent in that, like knowing exactly why they were doing it.
Yeah, it became a total ghost town. You wouldn't find any Pride merch or anything even catering, not even like Pride specific merch, but nothing catering to queer or trans people outside of June. It was like we didn't exist anymore.
Yes, yeah, we only come around once a month.
It's true. Once a year. The rest of the year, we are invisible. We don't exist.
Yep.
Well, the fact that so many companies participating in rainbow capitalism are run nearly entirely by cis people is also part of the problem. If there are any trans people helping run the company, they're likely the only one or one of a very small handful, and thus are the least empowered to push for change. It is the same thing I've talked about in my Trans Rep in Media 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025 reports. Those are episodes 52 to 54, 97 to 99, and 144 to 147. where so many television shows have no trans people on the writing staff, or maybe one if we're lucky. They're almost never in the higher levels, and if they speak up about harmful representation or transphobic jokes, they're the most likely to be punished for it and possibly lose their jobs. It is the same in any business, and it's why changing things for the better in terms of all of this requires more good cis people to hire more trans people at all levels. But recently, things got even worse in the Rainbow Capitalism department because, for reasons, a very bad man and his smell of old cabbage cronies gained control of the U.S. government. They are bigots through and through in every way you can imagine. For more on the impact that's had on me and the trans population, check out episode 90 of this podcast on the 2024 election results. Where do we go from here? Capitalism is going to capitalism. So a lot of companies that wanted to get on the very bad man's good side so they could get lower taxes or get a merger approved, etc., donated to him and his quote-unquote causes, stabbing every trans and queer customer and employee of theirs in the back. They have directly enabled every bigoted move that man has made since he took office in 2025. As part of that, so many of them that previously wanted to appear inclusive and like they were good companies who cared about people rolled back their DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Those programs were designed to address the very problem I was just talking about, to make companies less white, less cisgender, less heterosexual, less ableist. And so you see exactly why the fascist cishet white men in power hated it, because they view rights as pie. If anyone but them gains rights that only they previously had, or a job only they previously had, they see it as a personal attack and believe they are being oppressed and there's less pie for them. When they've been lionized and supported and told you're the very best and most important special boy for their entire life, anyone not telling them that is like a slap in the face to them. It's why I had to do episode 30 of this show on cis is not a slur. There is no default human. You have raised your hand. Yes, Susan, you have a question.
I just want to speak to the possibly clueless people who might be listening and think that DEI is bad because of propaganda.
Right.
Okay, so and I see people say DEI is bad. It should be based on merit. As an aside, nothing in this society is based on merit.
Oh, no.
Absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Literally
Nope.
nothing. Okay, but that aside, here's an example of what DEI would be. You get a whole bunch of resumes for a job. Like, you posted a job, you want to hire someone. A DEI practice would be taking everyone's name off of it and anything relating to their date of graduation, so that you have no ageism and you have no possible thoughts in your head about someone's name that might not sound like a white person. So it's a way of making things more equal by taking away those biases that are already in all of us.
Because of society.
Because of society.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
actually does make the playing field more level. That is what a DEI practice would be. I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you for the lesson.
Okay.
The biggest brouhaha over the removal of DEI programs happened with Target, and they started even before Trump got elected because a few loud bigots made a giant multinational corporation shake in its boots. Quote from a Wikipedia link in the show notes, quote, "A backlash against Target occurred in the lead up to Pride Month in 2023 after the American retailer released its Pride Month merchandise, sparking attacks and threats from conservative anti-LGBTQ groups. In May 2024, Target announced that not all stores would carry its 2024 Pride collection," end quote. And they continued being horrible. Quote from an NPR link in the show notes, quote, "Target says it will no longer sell its 2024 Pride Month collection in all its stores following last year's conservative backlash over its LGBTQ plus themed merchandise. The retail giant said in a press release last week that it plans to offer its collection of products to celebrate Pride Month during the month of June, both online and in select stores, depending on, quote, historical sales performance, end quote. They're trying to play it both ways there. We still have Pride merch where the queers live. Support us, but also look, very bad man, we removed most of it. Quote, in a statement to NPR, A spokesperson for the retailer says it is committed to supporting the LGBTQ plus community not only during Pride Month, but year round. End quote. You don't actually support us year round. You're not even supporting us during Pride. So here's a thought. How about you go to hell?
I
Oh,
second that. In the lead up to this, I was like, what does, because last year's, I haven't shopped at Target in a long time because we are boycotting them. But
yeah,
like the last time I looked at their Pride collection, it was laughable. It was like, I think they had like a beige t-shirt with like a very small rainbow stripe on the like
That's
pocket
right,
or
I saw
something.
those. Yeah, really
Yes.
funny.
Yeah, and then so this year I was like, I wonder what they're doing now. There's no mention of Pride at all on their homepage anymore. It's just like very Americana, like they're straight to 4th of July. And
yeah.
Mhm.
I had to search. I did a search for Pride in their on their Target website, and they do have merch, but again, it's really, really like kind of like whispering the word rainbow.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and could be like I have like rainbow socks, and that's pretty much yeah. So I just thought that was funny.
Target's downfall is delicious.
It is. There's going to
Yes.
be so much more about them coming up. Okay. Especially because it gets even worse. Here's a quote from an NBC link in the show notes. Quote, Target added that in addition to selling LGBTQ themed home and food and beverage items, apparel from its Pride collection this year will be tailored to adults. No Pride apparel for children will be sold. End quote. This is feeding right into the propaganda of trans and queer people as groomers, not to mention that trans kids exist and need support more than ever. This shit infuriates me. Listen to episodes 127 and 128 on Trans Kids 1 Facts and Dangers and Trans Kids 2 The Intake Exam and Trans Flight for the actual truth on trans kids, and episode 156 on the fetishization of trans women 2 Reactions and Origins for the absolute Darvo projection these people pull to paint innocent trans and queer people of the things they are guilty of. It also silos us off to the quote unquote queer areas of the US, but trans and queer people literally live everywhere. And not only that, in the areas where it's less safe for us to be openly out, big stores selling pride merch there normalizes our existence in areas that badly need it. And these absolutely giant companies with profits in the billions are mostly protected from bigoted blowback because bigots are just a very loud but actually small minority. Most Republicans who campaign on anti trans rhetoric lose their elections. It is not a popular stance. There's a link in the show notes from truthout.org about that. But it doesn't matter to them. They fear the bigots, probably because the bigots are the constituents of the Republicans that these companies donate to get their precious lower tax rates. And it continued on. Quote from a Forbes link in the show notes. Quote, Target shifted a less flamboyant collection of Pride Month merchandise back to make room for patriotic Independence Day displays in store and Father's Day online, as other major retailers are likewise reducing emphasis on Pride displays and focusing more on other summer shopping holidays. End quote. Replacing Pride merch with jingoistic items to celebrate our country that's full of colonialism, genocide, systemic racism, systemic misogyny, systemic transphobia, and more is so on the nose. I would like to tell the writers of reality that I think a little more subtlety might go a long way. Okay. Target was far from the only offender, of course, even though they've garnered the most headlines. Quote from another Forbes link in the show notes. Quote, Tech company IBM and beer brewer Constellation Brands are reportedly among the latest in a wave of corporations retreating from diversity, equity, and inclusion policies amid pressure to comply with President Donald Trump's executive orders gutting DEI and online attacks from conservative influencers. End quote. And it went on and on. Quote from an Outsmart magazine link in the show notes. Quote, companies are treading lightly, avoiding prominent campaigns and visible public support. 39% say they plan to scale back public Pride Month engagements this year, according to a survey of more than 200 corporate executives. That includes sponsoring Pride events, posting supportive messages of LGBTQ rights on social media, and selling Pride themed merchandise. Consumer brands are wary of provoking right wing customers and activists, and they fear reprisals from President Donald Trump's administration. Federal agencies have threatened to investigate companies with diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. End quote. I have noticed, and people have mentioned to me that they've seen this too, that companies that do still have Pride merchandise or that brought it back in any capacity did so with the classic rainbow Pride flag. Many would have no trans pride options and not even use the Progress Pride flag that includes trans people. Anything that would even hint at that pink, white, blue combo was simply gone. This is all anecdotal, sadly, as I couldn't find any actual reporting on it. But given how little any trans issues are covered at all outside of the bigoted framing of us losing our rights, I should not be surprised. Have you noticed that at all, Mia? Pride merch with a complete lack of trans or non binary representation in them?
Yes, I was pretty surprised. So I went just to see, the companies that were putting, their money where their mouth is and actually
Yeah.
donating. So I found an article on advocate.com called Seven Brands Not Backing Down from Pride This Year. And it was, like Levi's and REI and Hot Topic was on there, like a bunch of fashion. And so I went to the websites of every single one of these, and the only one that I could find that had like very visible trans representation was Hot Topic. They had 20 pages of merch for Pride, which was
Wow.
amazing.
Go
Yeah,
Hot Topic Mall Goths. Yeah.
Yeah.
yes. But then you go to like American Eagle and Old Navy and Abercrombie and Fitch, which still makes me laugh. But like they are donating to various funds and everything, but their merchandise is all very, very low key. And even like I would say some of it goes just even beyond like, oh, this is just kind of a vintage rainbow to where like if you could kind of say that it's Pride flavored if you really squint and if you were
Yeah.
standing in front of people only wearing beige maybe. So like it's very, very subtle, and again like no trans representation really in any of these that I could find. And it struck me that it kind of, and maybe this is where you were going with this, but like it felt to me like they were kind of making this appeal to nostalgia, like, oh
Mm,
yeah, you remember the old pride flags of the 80s and the 70s when it was simple and we just had these colors. And don't worry about all the different flags that we have now. This one is fine. And it was really like this just glaring omission to me of all of
yeah.
the, yeah, like it just felt like a very kind of intentional wedge driver. We've heard in other area, and I'm sorry if I'm veering way too off topic, but I think you even see like some of this pointed towards the queer community, right? Where it's like, well, you can be a good gay and not have to worry about like the trans people because
Oh, yeah.
they're that's a different flavor. Yeah, like that's where this marketing feels like it's headed for me.
Yeah, I think that's valid. There is a definite, movement from cis queers that to try to exclude trans people because they think it will save them, and it's the whole
Yes.
I never thought the leopards would eat my face. It's like they don't like you. They're just going to come after you next. They're already going after marriage equality. It's not going to save you. Yeah.
Yep.
It's
Yeah.
gross.
It's so gross. One
Very
of the
gross.
places I first noticed this was with Pride merchandise for my beloved Star Trek. I have talked about how important Trek is to me in many of these episodes, and especially in a trans re-wedding in episode 72, or where it was the theme of our entire celebration. Here is a little snippet from the original Rainbow Capitalism episode back in episode 23 on how much having Trek Pride merch actually meant to me. There's an old photo of me in a trans pride Star Trek Delta shirt giving the live long and prosper salute with the text, I admit it's nice to have merch with the trans flag on it. I have a shirt with the official Star Trek Delta / trans flag combo that means so much to me because it is official, but it's more than just blowing smoke because Trek has been actually featuring non-cis characters. So, I got an email from the official Star Trek shop about their new Pride collection, and I excitedly clicked right over, only to find all of it was only in the classic rainbow Pride flag colors. There were no trans options or even Progress Pride options to be found. There is a link to this Pride collection in the show notes if you want to see it for yourself. And you can see exactly how that made me feel in the social media post I made immediately after visiting the site. A Blue Sky post I made at 7:36 a.m. on May 18th, 2026 reads, "Sure got me feeling some kind of way that this year's official Star Trek merch for Pride is different from past years. There's now 0 trans Pride options. Their slogan is space for everybody, but when you remove all trans options, it feels like maybe it's not." There were a lot of other trans people who were rightly really upset about us seemingly being removed from the Trek Pride collection because we had been part of it before. It felt like erasure. Multiple people reached out to them about it, and apparently it was a lot of people, several of whom sent me the reply they received. Quote, "I'm sorry for not getting back to you sooner. We've been receiving a high volume of inquiries and we're doing our best to respond as quickly as possible. Thank you for reaching out and sharing your concerns with us. We truly appreciate you taking the time to provide this feedback. We want to assure you that there was absolutely no intention to exclude trans, queer, or any members of the LGBTQIA+ community from our Pride collection or messaging. Inclusivity and representation are values that are deeply important to us, especially as part of a brand inspired by the ideals of diversity, unity, and acceptance. The design currently featured in the collection was based on a previously approved creative asset rather than an intentional statement regarding which pride flag was used. We understand, however, that symbolism matters and we appreciate you bringing this to our attention. Feedback like yours helps us continue to improve and be more thoughtful in how we represent and celebrate the community. We have shared your comments with the appropriate teams for review and consideration moving forward. Thank you again for speaking up and for being part of the Star Trek community. Best regards, Alyssa O., Star Trek Shop, U.S. Customer Support." End quote. I truly want to believe this was just an accidental oversight, that the design already had all the approvals, and it's a nice design, I don't hate it, and so they used it and didn't realize what the lack of trans options would be saying, both based on their past availability and the political climate we're in, especially with the slogan "space for everybody." When you couple that with the seeming removal of trans people, it feels like you don't believe we're part of the community. But you know what would have helped avoid this? Trans people having input on the design and release of your Pride Month merchandise. Same as at any company or any writer's room. There are things cis people just aren't going to see or realize because they can't. And now that reply is absolutely a form response because everyone who contacted them and shared their reply with me had identical replies. But maybe that's actually a good thing, because if they were truly getting as many complaints as they say, it would be impossible for them to respond to them all individually. If they'd only received a couple, the replies would have been shorter and unique. Yeah. Well, what do you think about this issue with the Star Trek Pride merch, Mia? Do you believe it was an accidental oversight?
I'm hard pressed to believe that. I mean, it could have been. I mean, to your point, like if they didn't have any trans people, it was only cis people. I could definitely see someone saying like, "Well, we've got this rainbow, and we have a limited budget, so let's just stick with these designs this year,"
Right.
and not really think anything of it. But yeah, like definitely with the way that the trans flag and representation was really kind of gaining ground over the years in these things until, as you pointed out, this re-election happened of an
Yeah.
awful person, and then suddenly it just bottomed out. I always My pinnacle of Pride merch, Rainbow Capitalism, were the couches that IKEA made in 2021. I don't know if you two
They made
remember those.
Pride couches? I do not know about these.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I will share the link with you. They're the most I think about these couches way too much because they had, queer artists from all different backgrounds and everything, and they had them make custom pride couches for various flags. Yeah, and so like that to me is just like if you aren't doing as much as IKEA is, then I don't think that you're doing enough for your pride. And yeah, I do really think that like the erasure, I think that you were right to call it erasure, and I would be leaning more towards the person that made those decisions to not put trans merchandise in that area was more deliberate than not. Like maybe it was just a quiet deliberation, but I do think that it was deliberate. And it's unfortunate because Star Trek is really, I mean, come on, it's freaking Star Trek. Like there's so
Right?
many societies. That's like that's one of the places that I would expect to see wholehearted embrasure and I guess embrasure isn't a word, embracement of
It can be a word
trans
if we want it to
Sounds
be.
good. I like it.
embrasure.
Embrasure. I love it. We're gonna get it added to the dictionary.
Excellent. Yeah, I could that's where I would expect to see it. So it's weird to not have it in that space.
Yeah, it feels intentional to me too, but even so, like, even though you say it wasn't, you're still causing harm by what you're doing.
Yes,
Yeah, I
yes.
mean, the form replies seem to kind of acknowledge that there were unintended consequences if it was honest and true and that's how it was. But I also feel like behind the scenes that whoever handles the merchandising on the Star Trek website, knowing that they for many previous years, not just 1 year even, but for like the past 5 years, there have been trans pride Star Trek merch options during Pride Month. And so it feels like at this point, somebody along the line, Summer must have said, "Oh, do we want to also do the Pride ones?" And even if someone was like, "No, we don't want to
The
review
trans
the
one.
design,"
Yeah.
right, the trans
Yep.
Pride ones, they're like, they have to realize what that decision is meaning, especially in this climate where everything is so anti-trans
Well,
in the
to be
news.
honest,
Yep.
I work for giant corporations and that message said nothing. It said nothing. It gave you no promises.
It's true, there were no
It was
promises in
nothing.
there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, to circle back to what we talked about earlier, you can see more of this pushback in action with the boycott of Target that was started by Black folks in protest of the store's new anti DEI policies. Quote from a CNN link in the show notes. Quote, across the country, faith leaders and civil rights activists are calling for boycotts, urging Black consumers to redirect their spending to Black owned businesses or stores and companies that remain committed to DEI. End quote. And it's working. So much so that their CEO even stepped down. Quote from another CNN link in the show notes. Quote, Target is really struggling and does not seem to be able to climb out of the hole it has dug itself into. The company has also faced intense customer backlash for its retreat on some diversity initiatives. Earlier this year, the company ended some of its DEI programs. The decision angered supporters of diversity and inclusion policies who felt blindsided by Target. Customers online protested Target's decision, and Target acknowledged its move hurt its sales.
I
And
like
quote,
that the best though. It's like we know this is bad and hurting us, and we're still shooting ourselves in the butt.
We're
yeah,
still gonna do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
there
Okay.
are there are companies, as Mia mentioned earlier, who have stood up to the fascists and refused to comply by canceling their DEI programs. They are showing an actual commitment to doing the right thing, if you can believe it. There is a list of 25 major companies who pushed back in the show notes from The Advocate. A quote. Quote, as President Trump and his allies wage war on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, some companies are refusing to cave, while others, like Target, Amazon, Walmart, and McDonald's, have backpedaled under political pressure. These businesses have stood firm. These are the companies committed to recognizing that diversity isn't a liability, it's a strength, end quote. And one of those is my beloved Costco, who I adore not just for their food court pizza, though that is like at least 73% of the reason. Quote, one of the first companies on the list to announce its commitment, Costco has been applauded for its firm support of its DEI policies. Costco has kept its DEI initiatives, launching training programs focused on unconscious bias and cultural competency, ensuring that employees at all levels are equipped to support an inclusive workplace. Over 98% of Costco shareholders voted against a proposed anti DEI initiative, as the board said it believes our commitment to an enterprise rooted in respect and inclusion is appropriate and necessary. This decision has led to widespread support with buy-ins taking place across the country. End quote. Costco is actually one of the very best experiences I ever had in trying to update my membership with a new name after it had been legally changed. Episode 154 on inclusive bureaucracy will show you just how easy it can be when you actually care. And it has financially paid off. Quote from a Seeking Alpha link in the show notes. Quote, total sales were up 11.6% to 69.2 billion in financial quarter 3, which was a higher growth rate than other major retailers such as Walmart, Target, Best Buy, and Dollar General saw with their roughly overlapping earnings reports. End quote. Target's tried to get consumers back this year, but it's not going great. Quote from The Street, link in the show notes. Quote, even though Target's most recent quarterly earnings report was better than expected, comparable sales fell 2.5%, and overall revenue plunged 1.5% year over year. And the company is facing huge challenges as consumers broadly reduce their discretionary spending due to financial pressures. End quote. Ah, but Costco sells gas and Target doesn't, and gas is super expensive now, sure. But, quote, excluding the impact from higher gas prices, overall comparable Costco sales increased 7.8% in April, while digital comparable sales grew 18.4% for the month, end quote. And yes, the economy tanking even further in 2026 due to the same very bad man has made people spend less overall. Quote from an MSN link in the show notes. Quote, Costco topped revenue forecast late Thursday, bolstered by higher comparable sales and membership fee income, but earnings for the wholesaler came in below estimates. The report lands amid growing concerns that higher fuel prices and inflation pressures could be stifling consumer spending. Retailers Target and Walmart earlier this month reported quote unquote resilient consumer spending, partially bolstered by tax refunds and stimulus measures. But those benefits will fade throughout the year, which weighed on their outlooks, end quote. But people are still spending, just not with Target. Evidence seems to show a whole lot of them have gone to Costco. Quote from a Business Insider link in the show notes. Quote, a survey from the consumer analytics firm Numerator has found customer foot traffic and market share have shifted from Target to Costco, particularly among shoppers who say DEI is important. In terms of year over year visits, the firm said Target saw nearly 5 million fewer shopping trips during the 4 weeks ending on February 9th. By contrast, Costco saw nearly 7.7 million more visits during the same period. End quote. I know it's delightful, isn't it?
I
Delicious.
love it.
That was a great little laugh. What would it take for you, Mia, to shop at Target now? Like, what would they have to do to earn your business back?
I don't know, like, a lot of groveling, I think. I had
Best
some
answer.
problems with yeah, I had some problems with Target even before this whole
Sure.
boycott happened, with them, like, locking up baby formula
Oh,
behind, like,
yeah.
you padlocks. Yeah, so stuff like that. But yeah, they would have to walk it all back, and then there would have to be a lot of groveling, and not only just back to where it was, but, what are the commitments for them to go further? And
Yes.
also, I do think that they should go more. I know that, with how corporate structures are, it's difficult to change. You couldn't Target couldn't just overnight become Costco, because Costco's set up in a very different way, and there'd be a lot of lawyers, but they could
Right.
create some kind of council or something like that, like a community engagement group, or some kind of, like, that directly has the voice of their shoppers that have been harmed,
Yeah.
that helps dictate their policy going forward. I think that would be a good step.
I think that's really important. Like, if they ever want to fix this, they're going to have to acknowledge the actual harm that they have done, not just change
Hmm.
things back to how it was. It's like
Yep,
you have hurt so many people in so many ways, and that's a thing you have to like make restitution for if you're going to want my money back at any time soon.
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, GLAAD recently conducted a poll that showed the same thing. Here's a quote from an article about it in LGBTQ Nation, linked in the show notes. Quote, a new poll conducted by GLAAD ahead of Pride Month shows that large majorities of Americans support companies that support Pride, as well as politicians who oppose anti-LGBTQ plus attacks. The poll found that 68% of registered voters agreed that companies and brands should be able to show support for the LGBTQ plus community. Additionally, 61% believe public corporate support of the LGBTQ plus community has a positive impact on the community's acceptance, and 76% are more likely to trust a brand that sticks to its values and stands up for what is right, even if it is controversial. End quote. And that's the thing about this entire issue. From the Trek merch site apparently being flooded with complaints to Target profits absolutely cratering, while Costco fought back and now makes even more money than they did before. There are more of us than there are of them. And I don't mean just trans people. We are too small a part of the population to affect any kind of change on our own. Listen to episodes 88 and 89 on Trans Politics 1, Stop Tolerating Transphobia, in Trans Politics 2, You Must Vote to Protect Us, for the details on that. And I don't just mean all queer people, who are a much larger group, but still a vast minority compared to all the cishet people in this country. I mean trans people and all queer people and cishet people who actually care about us. We vastly outnumber the bigots. 2/3 of this country did not vote to put that very bad man in office. Not enough tried to stop him, but that is a different issue. Most people are not bigots and have no problem with trans people. Companies supporting us and standing up for us actually makes the good 2/3 of this country like them more. Why worry about the bigoted third when you could have all of the other 2/3? Oh, right, tax breaks. Well, a whole lot of good those do you when your profits are in the toilet, though. Meanwhile, Costco is over here keeping their integrity and making bank. Supporting us is the morally right thing to do, but even from a naked capitalistic greed standpoint, it is the right thing to do.
Costco needs a pride section.
They do.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't have one, and they're still one of the best companies. Like, they don't need a pride section to show their support of us.
No, I'm just
Very
saying
true.
I would like to buy it at Costco.
I would too.
Yes.
I'm going to write them.
Good idea. Let's start a campaign. Write Costco and tell them to have Pride merch. I also want Pride pizza and Pride hot dogs. Don't ask me how.
Okay.
They need to figure it out.
Oh, my.
Pride pizza.
Thanks for being here, Mia.
Thank you for having me. This was a really good conversation. Got me fired up too.
Yeah. Remember, folks, there are more of us than there are of them, and it's high time everyone started acting like it. Tilly Bridges, end transmission. Tilly's Trans Tuesdays is hosted by Tilly Bridges and Susan Bridges, with audio editing and sound mixing by Jillian Morgan. The written essay version of this week's topic and all past topics is available at tillystranstuesdays.com. Special thanks to Daisy and Jane for the use of Sorry Not Sorry as our show's theme music. Please stop by and show your support at daisyandjane.bandcamp.com and soundcloud.com/daisyandjane. You can find me at Tilly Bridges on Blue Sky, on Mastodon at Tilly Bridges and Mastodon.social, and on Insta at Heck Yeah Tilly Bridges. And you can find Susan on those at Susan L. Bridges. You can find Jillian at Audio Jillian on Blue Sky. You can join the Tillyverse Discord server by following the link at the very bottom of tillystranstuesdays.com. We hold regular watch parties for the Matrix films and other trans movies, where I do a live Q&A, and it's blossomed into a wonderfully supportive, compassionate, kind community of friends. We'd love to have you join us. If you'd like to keep up with all the writing that Susan and I do, you can sign up for our newsletter at birdguestbroadcast.com. Signed copies of our comics and my book, Begin Transmission, The Trans Allegories of the Matrix, are available on my coffee shop at ko-fi.com/tillybridges. If you're listening on YouTube, it's so cliche, but please like and subscribe and take a few seconds to leave a comment. Those feed the algorithm and helps the show be found by so many more people. If you're listening on other platforms, ratings and reviews help just as much, and I'd certainly appreciate them. Thank you for your support. For more information, visit pendantaudio.com. Thanks for listening.